Well, welcome to part 2 of our evening with Jan. We were privileged in the first part of this little series to learn about great-grandmother Morgan and her immense courage and resilience and faith in the face of overwhelming loss during the 1913 Singhennydd mine disaster. And Jan, tonight, you're going to talk to us about how your great-grandmother has continued and continues to play a big part in your life, even though she's passed away many a year now, but her story continues to influence you. So and there's one particular kind of episode in your life. So I wonder, Jan, if you would talk us through what has happened to you and maybe why your grandmother continues to play such a role in your life.
Yes. Well, in 2003, I was badly beaten in my job. And it took me 2.5 years to recover. I had the support of family and 3 very close friends. And initially, after the incident, I didn't leave the house for 4 to 5 months at all. In fact, my first journey out was to the letterbox in the road with my sheepdog, whose temperament was not good-natured, but it rather suited me because I felt safe. The incident proved to be life-changing, and
so when you said you were beaten, Jan, I mean, we don't have to go into details, but this is we're talking about a very serious
yes,
physical assault.
It was a very serious assault, and that left me with many injuries, and even in recent years I've had to undergo another operation. So that will give you some idea. It wasn't just bruising, there were fractures and trauma to my jawline, my eyes, my head, and my neck bone was broken. I was under the care of a trauma specialist, a very experienced man who'd dealt with the aftermath of the Falklands War and Sir Galahad. So I was in very safe hands. But it took years for me to really, truly recover. And in fact, even now, I still suffer at night, and there are areas of Cardiff that I just cannot visit, just in case. And the person did receive a prison sentence. But has my prayers. I had to find ways to reconnect with the community. I'd lost all confidence, self-esteem, and any ability and belief in myself. So it was going to be a long journey for me, if at all, at one point, did I think that I would ever recover. One of the things that I suggested to the trauma specialist was that I would do a collage, go through hundreds of photographs at home and make a collage of all the positive things in my life in an effort to come to terms and realise, well, actually, you're still alive. And things are not as bad as they could have been, although that's not what one report said. So I set about with hundreds of photographs around me in my living room floor, cutting away, and I thought, what am I going to put in the centre of this picture, this collage? What am I going to do? I thought, I know. My great-grandma Morgan. Vivid childhood memories of gatherings at her home. At that time, as a child, not knowing what on earth she herself had been through. But then I was to go on a discovery to find out what it was that she had undergone. And it was, of course, that she'd shut her door one morning to her 3 sons and a husband, said goodbye to them, and looked after the remaining children at home, with a difference that she actually would never ever see her husband and 3 eldest teenage sons again. Oh, that took something to swallow. It was hard.
But you knew at that point, you knew a fair bit about your great-grandmother.
Yes, I did. I needed to get more information, and I have through the old newspapers that I've got and things like that. But I knew that from my mother, whom she brought up as her own, that she never ever cried, and indeed we never saw her miserable or crying or upset at any point. I discussed it with my sister, who sadly died just after my mum, but at the time was alive, and there was never, between us, we never saw anything that gave us any inkling that anything was really wrong. And her story was very, very sad indeed. But it was thinking and mulling over in my mind what she'd gone through and how she dealt with it. That was the key. How did she deal with something as traumatic as that?
Yes.
Well, surely if she could do it, I could. I could. And I would stare at the photograph in the centre and think, well, this has got to be a turning point for me. This woman had something that most of us would regard as insurmountable. But she had faith. Courage, faith, and the will to put her children first, not marry again, protect them, bring them up, and do her part as the remaining adult in their lives. And she did a fantastic job. And I'm thinking to myself, as I'm looking at her photograph, there were no social workers, there was no one to help her. And I have got friends around me, I have got family, and I have got this specialist, trauma specialist. And she gave me something to think about. And I thought, I want her to be proud of me. I want to be able to do this myself and not be so afraid and not, and in fact, to have the faith, which was a huge turning point for me in my personal faith.
I'm sure. So Jan, just to recap, you suffered a very savage assault at work, as a result of which you required significant surgery for some time after that, and for 4 or 5 months unable to leave the house because of anxiety and fear.
It's terrible.
And so you mentioned physical trauma and having a trauma specialist. You obviously as well had post-traumatic stress, as we would describe it now. It's having witnessed and experienced that kind of assault, a personal assault, which left you in fear of your own life at one point. So you've reflected on that, and now the collage you've begun to work on. Your grandmother's or great-grandmother Morgan is back in view. She's in your line of vision, and she's beginning to inspire you. So I wonder if we could go on to the next stage of that journey. What's changed in you as a result of your experience, but also reflecting on great-grandmother Morgan?
Well, what's changed in me is my attitude to life and how much I value each and every person, and respect. I always had respect, but this is a different thing altogether. In 2007, I joined Christians Against Torture here. A small group as it was then. It's much larger now. And it was through that I found huge comfort. Because here we were dealing and talking about people who were imprisoned for doing nothing wrong, but somebody higher up deemed that they had. And all sorts of issues, like the younger people in China and things like that. And it was at one of these meetings that David Clark was at that the subject of forgiveness came up. And as I recall, he did actually say that he'd found it difficult in one area, to forgive. And I knew I certainly did find it difficult to forgive, because I felt at one point in the aftermath of this that my life had been ruined for no reason. I had not done anything wrong, and that was very clear. But since then, I have realised through Christians Against Torture that you have to forgive, or no, you don't have to. You should forgive the perpetrator. That came up time and time again. Don't only pray for the victim, but the perpetrator. And that's what changed my whole attitude to what had happened to me. I'd found myself actually thinking, well, perhaps on that day that person was particularly low, and perhaps in that occasion that person was afraid of helping me or whatever. And my whole concept of a situation changed immediately. And I knew all the time that I wanted to find, some sort of peace, which I think I have found, particularly in the last few years. Through sermons here and at Ararat and friendships. and hoping that people accept me for what I am, faults and all, and there are many. But yes, how did it change my life?
You mentioned, Jan,
Valuing people more.
but it sounds like something shifted in you, that out of the trauma of this incident, which could have driven you further away from the life of faith and church and God, and that does for some, understandably. The turning point for you seemed to take you closer to Him, or to be more. Not just ask questions, to trust in Him, to do what your great-grandmother did in a way, to press in.
The word trust is something I use a lot now. That I don't hope, but I trust. I trust in the way that I'm going. I trust in what I'm doing. And I trust in Him. So I think it's made me think more deeply.
Yes.
And appreciate life for what it really is. Every day. And prayers have to be for others. Because actually I now feel quite safe. So
how long did that take, Jan? So you suffered this. This thing happened to you in 2003. Obviously, we're whatever it is, 18 years on from that now. But how long did it take you to regain a sense of safety and of being able to walk, go about your life as normally without looking over your shoulder and thinking, oh gosh, am I...
At least 15 years, I think.
Wow, yeah.
Even now, I had to go out in the dark in the evenings. I wouldn't go out alone. So I found it sort of coming from meetings here in the dark to try and find somebody to go down that pathway with without saying, excuse me, I need, making an excuse.
Yes.
Because people don't know the background, so you can't stand there for 2 hours telling them. It's not something that you want to dig up every day.
So
but it has a significant influence on my life, and I still wake up at night sometimes. But it's getting less. And the reason for that is because I'm trusting.
Yes. Yes. Now, Jan, in 2013, I think, I have a paperback book in front of me here, which says Desmond Tutu,
yes,
and Mufo Tutu, his daughter, Made for Goodness. Mufi Tutu. It's a book, obviously co-written with each other, and there's a picture, there's a photograph inside of you along with other people in the presence of the great man. Possibly his daughter as well, if she was there.
Yes, she was there.
No, they were both there, the great people themselves. So tell us about that, because Desmond Tutu, as we know, is well known, and his daughter. Mustn't forget his daughters. They both contributed greatly to the need for forgiveness and reconciliation.
Yes.
And so what are you doing in the photo, Jan?
He has set up a foundation in Ubuntu, which means something like, I am who I am because of who you are, and reflects on the way that African families all bring up a new baby. They all influence, and I think that's more or less Ubuntu. And at the time, I was organising some musical events with the Caerphilly May Voice Choir and harpists from the Royal College and a young man whose name, Ben Tarleton, cello. Organised these events at Bethany Baptist Church only because the acoustics are very good there. For the African charity, African Life for African Mothers, which deals with the sending of medication out to the South Suburban Africa. I was doing some charity work for that, and I was asked to attend. There were 25 people attended that meeting, and I was one of them. And I had to tell about my trauma. Not explicitly. No. Because I found it was too sensitive at that time. It's still too sensitive for me to even speak about it. Yes, he was incredibly funny. Of short stature with a little Dutch hat on. Dutch cap. And he was very funny, very relaxed, and saw me with my book under my arm and said, "I suppose you want me to sign that, do you?" And I said, "Well, I think that would be a lovely idea." So he was very, very nice, asked me what I did and that sort of thing. And yes, he was there at this workshop, which looked at healing processes for trauma and things like that. So that's how I
So you had to
met him.
Tell your story in front of a group of strangers, including
some medics there, and
a Nobel Prize winner. Because I think he is, isn't he?
Yes, he is, and he at the time I was running a cultural group at school, which raised awareness of other cultures and religions, which included my own. And that was hugely attended and consisted of dance, music, bird life, anything that was to do with promoting that particular country. So I made many friends from that. A urologist and a lady who used to come in to do Indian dances was an ophthalmic surgeon to talk about theirs, and often we would compare the different religions and how we looked at things. It was very, very interesting. And I ran that for 10 or more years there. Very, very popular. When we did Scotland, we had the Golden Eagle in, which was a first for a Golden Eagle to go into a school. But we talked about that and the issue of promoting peace and preparing children in primary school, ready for high school, that people wear grip bracelets and do their hair a certain way because that's part of their culture and their religion. And we have to respect that, but equally we want that respect too. So he was quite interested in that,
So Jan, as you look back now, 2021, 18 years, if my sums are right, stand between you today and that incident that took place, with that life-changing incident in 2003. How do you view it all now, and how different do you feel now to the Jan that suffered that trauma 18 years ago?
I've got a lot more patience and understanding, and I view problems in a different way. And I feel much more awareness and much more strength in my faith. How do I view it? It's almost as though that was someone else. And I know it isn't. I know when I get a bit jittery, I do jump a bit. But I think I'm a better person. I'm more comfortable with issues that I wasn't comfortable with before. I'm more tolerant. It certainly was a reawakening. It has to happen to you, like anything else in life, for you to understand and have the empathy for others. It has to happen to you first. And to say, oh, brush yourself down and go back to work, is just not the sort of thing that you need to hear.
No. Jan, thank you very much for sharing with us your story, great-grandmother Morgan's story, and her continuing legacy in your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a privilege.